Ramy is one of the hottest comedy, is one of the hottest shows currently on television that centers around a Muslim American 20-something trying to figure out his place in the world. And it was created by the Golden Globe winning star of the show, Ramy Youssef, who joins us today. I'm Charlie Wright of Gold Derby. And Ramy, the first question I want to ask is about your character. At the end of season 2, he seems like he's getting into the kind of the toxic territory. And I want to know, where do you think he goes from the end of season 2? Because that was a pretty abrupt ending.
Thanks, Charlie. Yeah, it was a really exciting place for us to take him. I think that really so much of what we look at in this show, in terms of representation, it's less about representation of a Muslim family, but more about representation of faith and the representation of a believing millennial and what that might look like. And I think that as we do that, as a show, we really are interested in this idea of faith and the performance of faith. And so much of where we put Ramy's character throughout the season, and certainly by the end, is we want to put him at a crossroads where he really has to face, what does he actually believe and what's coming from his ego? What's genuine and what is performative? And I think that that's really at the nature of anyone who seems to be something, and then we really see where they're actually at. And so to me, it's less toxic and it's more like a gift to this character. I mean, something really, something does happen that I think we're all cringing. I'm even cringing watching it after I've performed it, because we do care about this character, I think, and we do care about what's happening. But he's been really afforded a huge gift. I think that, we watch him deal with this thing around a marriage. So many people, not just people of faith, so many people in this country enter marriages and enter relationships only for them to really crash like years and years later, because of these core things that never got resolved. It's secretly a gift. It's secretly a gift to everyone involved, but it's really exciting for us to, again, put him at this crossroads.
So the next question I want to ask is about one of the characters on the show, Steve, who is a friend of yours in real life. Is Steve that big of a jerk in real life?
No, he certainly has fun doing it on the show, but he is definitely one of the most thoughtful, sweetest people I know. But he really is an exciting person because he has no filter. He's been through so much, he's experienced so much, and the idea of having no filter is very much at the core of who he is. But we certainly really step into that in the show.
What made you want to develop his character in that way is something I've also been curious about.
I think that he really is probably the person who's always calling Ramy out and looking at Ramy's ego as opposed to looking at Ramy's good intentions. I think that Ramy is driven between his good intentions and his belief, but also subconsciously by his ego and him trying not to face some pain. And I think Steve really speaks to that subconscious. And I think that they both see each other in a way that no one else sees the other. And it's probably the most intimate relationship on the show. And so it's really exciting for us to explore that and look at two people who are trying to be themselves and trying to be independent, but they need each other in order to do that. And it's really exciting for us to dig into.
So your show has this kind of, comedic quality. It's a comedy, but it's very much, a comedy of this time in that, it's very nuanced. It's not, your straightforward sitcom. And I'm curious, is there, usually with shows like this, you'll find like a certain character that is sort of like the embodiment of, even though it can go to other characters, that's sort of the embodiment of being used as a comedic character. And I'm curious, is there a character that you find best demonstrates the comedic aspect of the show?
There's a few. I mean, I think everyone kind of has their moment. I think what's exciting with this show is that we have the ability to step into different characters' shoes. And so, interestingly, if it's a character that was a side character in one episode then becomes the main character. So Often, obviously, the show's called Ramy, it's following me, but then you step into the character of Dina or the character of Mesa, and Ramy suddenly feels like a side character. I think in terms of comedic relief, we have Uncle Naseem, who is someone who is coming in and kind of being wild and bringing a lot of laughs. But then when we follow his perspective, we're suddenly in his shoes, and he's no longer like he suddenly becomes this 3D character that is delivering so much emotion, and he's not the funny part anymore. And I think that his character certainly, though, in many episodes is bringing that comedy. The friends, whether it be between the characters of Mo and Ahmed and Steve, are always bringing a lot of levity to what's happening with Ramy. But then his mom also too, Mesa, whether we're following her or we're just having her in a scene, is bringing a lot of that too. So it is really cool to feel that you can get laughs from a lot of these characters just by the nature of the situation.
I'm curious, how difficult is it? Because there are so many things in this world, of course, that are beyond our control, and certainly, a show like yours also, it would feel wrong not to address, current political situations, the current occupant of the White House, that sort of thing. I mean, how do you walk the line of, because I think you guys, you actually do it really well in terms of like not having it completely envelop the show, but it's always there. And I'm curious, how did you find any difficulty in trying to thread that needle?
Well, it's interesting because our show is not really political, except for the fact that it is, except for the fact that the Arabic language has been weaponized. A phrase like Allahu Akbar, or even Allah, feels like a negative due to how it's been extracted and politicized and expanded into this idea of danger. So we're already kind of on this tightrope, whether we want to be or not. And I think there is such nuance to what these characters are going through. Again, this is a story about people trying to be the better version of themselves, dealing with their higher and lower selves, dealing with who they want to be and who they actually are. That's super universal. So we don't hang our hat on political opposition. We hang our hat on characters trying to grow into something that pretty much anyone is. And as you do that, yeah, there are things that might come up. But in terms of like, we don't exist on the idea that Trump is in the White House. We don't exist on throwing hate that way. But if one of our characters does have an opinion about it, it's pretty much as organic as any character having an opinion on it on any show. Again, we're not predicated on that tension, but it certainly mixes into the recipe of what these characters have to deal with, whether they want to or not.
That actually makes me think of something from the end of the first season when you go to Egypt and you're talking with the relatives there, and they're all about Trump. They're just like, yeah, he's doing what he's got to do. Is that based on like actual conversations you've had with relatives?
That was based on a conversation that I had with one taxi driver in Cairo, but then I had it with another taxi driver, and I was like, oh, okay, this is an interesting prevailing thought, because I was in Cairo the year of the 2016 election. I had gone to Mecca and then I went to Cairo, and these were a lot of the conversations people were having. And so it felt like a very interesting flavor to put into the show. I would by no means say it's like the majority opinion in Cairo, but it definitely is something that exists and is there, and again felt like an interesting shade for Ramy to run into.
So you actually brought up the character of Uncle Naseem, who really is such a seed stealing character, and by the actor who plays him as well. But you really went in a very, very interesting direction with him this season in terms of the episode that centers around him. I'm curious, how did you come about deciding that arc for Uncle Naseem? Did you have that in mind when you first created the character, or was that something that came about as you were developing season 2?
It kind of started to feel clear to me towards the end of the first season. I think it's interesting because so much of this is derived from my stand up, and so much of it comes from stuff that I'm brainstorming, obviously even between season ones and season two. But there was something about watching him play it out in season one. Just the dialogue, we meet him, he's very aggressive. In the second scene that we see him, he's being very homophobic, and he's kind of carrying around this machismo that a lot of times comes with hiding something. And towards the end of the first season, I believe I was talking with one of my co-creators, Ryan, and I was like, I almost more posed it as a question where I was like, is Uncle Naseem gay? And then we kind of really thought about it, and we were like, yeah, I think he is. And that really started to hit us at that point. And then, when we found out we were renewed for a second season and we were looking at what we wanted to jump into and explore, it became really clear to us that it would be the right way to talk about something that is obviously a discussion point for all cultures, with people hiding this identity and people not knowing how to grapple with it, especially generationally. And so to look at a man of that generation and a man who feels like he has to be a certain way, it felt really exciting to do that and put that in the fabric of the show.
So I mentioned earlier that you did win the Golden Globe for Best Actor in a TV Comedy this year at the Golden Globes. It was the first award. It was right off the bat, and that was a great way to start the ceremony. What was that whole experience and evening like? Because I have a feeling it was probably just out of this world for you.
Well, it was wild because Gold Derby said I wasn't going to win it. So I was like, well, I'm not going to win it. Gold Derby said it's not mine. So I was
okay.
No, it was so funny because I got there and I was in this corner table and I was like boxed into this corner and there were like people on each side of me. And right when I saw my name card on my seat, I was like, oh, I mean, I'm not going to win. Like they wouldn't put me here. Like it was so off to the side that I was just like, I don't think so. And then it was super out of body, man. It really was such an amazing experience. And it was also really silly and kind of wild, because you're just like, something about it feels ancient. Like you walk up and you get this gold trophy in front of a bunch of other people who've won gold trophies, and like now you're in this like gold trophy club and something feels very like Roman about it or something and feels very like wild, and then you're like, this is stupid, and then you're like, this is so amazing. And it's really just gratitude, just really grateful that, and I said this when I got up there, but just that something of this size and this specificity to scale and get recognized like that, it's really cool. And I know people can really talk about awards and be like, oh, who cares? It's just an award. But it is and it isn't. It really, I know why people are excited about it. And I know even like talking to you, you're asking really thoughtful questions. It's exciting to, especially in such a crowded landscape, to put a little bit of a check mark on something of like, look, I know there's 600 shows, but really you should watch this one. And that's what it did for us. It really gave us an entry point for people who are overwhelmed by the selection and what should I actually watch. And now to be able to say, hey, this thing did win something, it really meant, it was like our show came out again. That's how much it meant.
I should have asked this a couple questions ago, but I just thought I don't know why I didn't have this on my list of questions. What was it like having Hershel Alley in this season? Because he brings such an amazing presence to it.
He is so, again, someone who has accolades, but walks in and that's not what he's about. He really ingratiated himself to every single person on the cast and everyone in the crew, and just a dream. Like it's almost, you couldn't write how well he gelled with us and how well he really felt like he was part of the fabric of the show. And I think you get scared sometimes when a second season comes up and then you add a celeb and you add someone who kind of people know from other things, because you're like, man, the ingredients were really good. Like, are we going to switch this up? What's going to happen? Is this going to actually help us? And it really, it was a dream, just like on a personal level and in the level of what we got to put out on screen. And, when he came initially in, I told him, I was like, look, man, our blueprint here is, this needs to be as seamless as Danny DeVito joining Sonny. I was like, you're going to be our Danny DeVito. And he took that to heart.
So I did have one other question about the Globe win. I think I saw an interview that you gave right after you won, saying that you were going to give the trophy to your mother. Did you end up doing that, and what was her reaction?
Immediately, she was so happy. I got back to New York, and it went right to Jersey, and it was really exciting to get to just share it with my family. My sister was with me the night of, which was amazing. She'd been with me coming to my shows since my first show, doing stand up and doing, I did my first ever live show. I was 17. I did sketch comedy in my hometown, and so it was, to have her there with me was really, really cool. And then to be able to, yeah, have that added to the mantle of things at home. My mom said it could almost replace the fact that there was no college diploma. And so kind of had to deal with that. Yeah.
Well, well, thank you so much for joining us, Ramy. We wish you all the best during this year's Emmy season. And to all our viewers, please like this video and subscribe to our channel to get all our latest content. And don't forget to go to goldderby.com and use the Gold Derby app to make your predictions and see if you can outsmart the top prognosticators in Hollywood. Thanks again, Ramy.
Thanks, Charles. I appreciate it.